Hi there, I'm back. Today we are going to bake a chocolate cake with a twist. I got this chocolate cake recipe offline a few years ago, and I've been making it ever since I got it. It's a two-layer cake. It's all chocolate with chocolate icing, but the twist is we're gonna put cherries in between the layers. Yes, cherries. Now, if you're not a fan of chocolate and cherries, then you don't have to use the cherries. You can just put icing in between the layers, but I'm going to use cherries today. We're going to start off this recipe by mixing all of our dry ingredients, and I'm going to tell you everything that I'm putting in here, okay? I've already turn my camera down just a little bit so you can see what I have here. I've already measured my flour. This recipe calls for 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. So I took my 1 cup, I took a 1/4 cup and used 3 of these, 1 and 3. 1 3/4 cups of all-purpose flour. The recipe also calls for 2 cups of sugar. I've done that. 2 cups of sugar, and we're going to mix all of this together. What makes a chocolate cake is cocoa powder. And this particular recipe calls for 3/4 cups. So I'm going to use my 4th cup again, and I'm going to put 3 of these in here. And cocoa does make a mess. That's 1. And if you need to use a spoon to measure this, to get this in your cup correctly, you can do that. That's 2. And this is 3. Okay? That's our cocoa. Make sure we get it all out of here. That's our cocoa. Now, we're going to I need to add my leavening agents. And there's 3 of them. There's baking powder. We're going to use baking soda, and we're going to use salt, okay? And we're going to use our teaspoon. This is my teaspoon. This recipe calls for a teaspoon of salt. Okay. It calls for a teaspoon of baking powder, and yes, I have to look at my recipes because when you bake a lot and you cook a lot, you can't keep it all up here. So I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And this is an easy recipe. You don't have to beat up your eggs and your sugar. In fact, this cake does not even have butter in it. You don't have to beat all that together. You just mix your dry ingredients and put your wet ingredients inside of it. So I need 2 teaspoons of baking soda. If we can get the lid off. Use this spoon to help me here. Okay, there we go. We need 2 of these. All of this is going to help your cake rise. 2. Okay, so as far as our dry ingredients, we have all of them. Your flour, your sugar, your cocoa powder, your baking soda, your baking powder, and your salt. And I'm going to take this sugar and I'm going to put it in this bowl. And what we're going to do, we're going to go over here to the mixer and mix these items together, and then we'll work on our wet ingredients. So I'm going to work with this camera, and remember, y'all, haven't been doing this that long. So we're going to go over here to the mixer because I want you to see me mix this cake up and see how simple it is to mix it up. You'll be making a chocolate cake from scratch in no time. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put all of my dry ingredients, and it might be easier if I take that off for right now. Pour my dry ingredients in. That's all of it. Okay? Sit that back down there. And I'm going to put my back on there, lock it, and I'm gonna slowly mix these ingredients. And I want you to get down here into this cake. Slowly mix the ingredients, and then we're gonna work on our wet. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. Now, what I'm gonna do, the recipe calls for 1 cup of buttermilk. Now, guess what? I don't have any buttermilk, but that's okay. That's okay. Most of us don't keep buttermilk unless we have a lot of recipes that call for it. Sometimes I buy it if I'm going to fix biscuits or even making this cake, I might buy it. But if you don't have buttermilk, that's okay. We can make our own buttermilk. So, and how you do that is for every cup of milk, you put a tablespoon of white vinegar and you have buttermilk. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of buttermilk. And to make it buttermilk, I use 2% milk. That's what we keep in the house, 2%. And it really doesn't matter. I'm going to take a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. Put that in my milk. I've made buttermilk. How about that? Stir it a little bit. And I hope you were all able to see that. And if you weren't, I apologize. 1 cup of milk. And you add 1 tablespoon of white vinegar. That makes your buttermilk. Okay. And then the recipe calls for 1/2 cup. And we're going to pour this buttermilk on into our big cup here because we're gonna mix it all together. The recipe calls for 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, and I just use Wesson vegetable oil. You can use any kind of vegetable oil you want, whatever brand you like. And I'm going to add that to my milk. It's 1/2 vegetable oil. It calls for 2 large eggs. Actually, this recipe calls for 2.5 large eggs. Let's move this out the way so you can see. I always crack my eggs into one bowl and put it into another. That way you can check your eggs. That's 1 extra large egg. And this is 2. And I truly hope you can see what I'm doing here. I'm going to grab a paper towel. Okay, and I'm also going to put this in the milk and vegetable oil mix. Okay. And then it calls for some vanilla flavor. And it says 1 teaspoon. I eyeball it. You can measure it because I'm really going to put in as much as I want anyway. Okay, it looks like about 1 teaspoon. And we're going to take a fork and we're going to mix all of this together. Let's try to break those eggs up, basically, is what we're doing. Okay, so that's your wet ingredients. Now, the one thing I do add to this chocolate cake is a cup of coffee. 1 cup of hot coffee, and we will do that once we get our cake mixed up. And I haven't heated up the coffee yet because I want it to be hot when I put it in here. So now we're going to turn our mixer back on, and we're going to slowly add in, putting you a little bit closer here. There we go. We're going to slowly add in our wet ingredients. Slowly add it in. That's looking good. It's looking really good. Slowly add it in. Look at that. This is a rich chocolate cake. It is rich, it is delicious. And with those cherries in between the layers, oh, yes. You will be making this chocolate cake many times, many times. It's that good. That is our wet ingredients outside of our 1 cup of coffee. And while that is mixing, I want you to watch it mixing. I'm going to get our 1 cup of coffee, hot coffee. I'm going to heat it up in the microwave to make sure it is good and hot. Okay. All right. See how beautiful that is? So we can put up all of our other ingredients. I want to bring you over here to the table so you can look at my cake pans. Okay. That looks like it has beat enough. We're just waiting on our coffee to put in it. And you want your coffee to be hot, guys. You want it to be hot. Okay, we're going to turn this off. And now we're going to get our coffee to pour in it. We're going to lift this so we don't have a mess. Look how beautiful that mix is, that batter is. Look how beautiful. Gorgeous. Gorgeous chocolate. You know, my mother used to make a chocolate cake. And yes, I have on colors today so that I don't blend into the kitchen. But my mother used to make a chocolate cake, and it was actually a yellow cake mix. And she put chocolate icing on it. That was her chocolate cake. But it was good. In fact, that yellow cake mix was her pineapple coconut cake, was her chocolate cake, and was her apple jelly cake. And they were all good. But me, I like my cake itself to be chocolate. So we're going to come over here to the microwave. I'm going to grab my coffee. Okay, and I'm trying to get you to follow me around this kitchen here. And we're going to take this hot coffee and we're going to put it in our cake batter. And yes, it is hot. And yes, sometimes we make a mess, but that's okay. Now we're going to turn this back on. I'm going to lock it and turn it back. And this batter is going to be really, really wet. It's not a dry batter. It's going to be wet. So we mixed it in there a little bit. I'm going to finish it off by stirring it. Okay? So let's put you right there. And we're going to take this off. Get all that goodness off of there. Don't leave none on there. You want it all. Put that in the sink. I'm going to take my spoon and I'm going to stir from the bottom. And this chocolate goodness here. Stir from the bottom, because a lot of times your batter gets stuck around the sides and that blade doesn't really get to the bottom of that bowl like you want it to. Yeah, my daughter saw me, my baby girl saw me with this apron on, and it was too much. It was too much, so I folded it down, and like I said, I just wanted to get some color, so I'm not blending into the color of the kitchen, which is really, really light. Okay, look at that. Look at this. Come on over here and look at this. Beautiful. Cake is gorgeous. Look at that. And it is wet. But that's okay. It's going to bake up beautifully. Now that we've got that, we want to turn around here and look at the cake pans. I have 2 cake pans. There they are, right there. And what I've done, I've already greased and floured one of them. But also, if you look in the bottom of this cake pan, I have a piece of parchment paper in it. And that's to help all of that cake come out of the pan. The way I grease a pan, it's going to come out anyway, but I don't want to leave anything behind. And I'm going to show you, as far as I know, they don't sell parchment paper that's in circles. As far as I know. Maybe they do, I don't know. So what I do is take my parchment paper, just tear off a piece. Let's move that out the way. Let's move all of this out the way. Take my parchment paper, fit it into my pan. Put it down into the creases of the pan. Take a sharp knife and go right along the edge of that pan. As long as your knife is sharp enough, and it may not be perfect and it doesn't matter. We just want a piece of parchment in the bottom of our cake pan. Okay, and there we have it. Tear it off. And there we have it in your cake pan. Okay, so we have two. I also need to put some flour in this one. I didn't put it in here before because I wanted you to see. Take a little bit of flour, because at this point it's basically on the edges of that. And if you watch one of my other videos where I made the sour cream pound cake, I showed you how to flour your pan. And we'll just do it over this one. Take it, turn it. You got flour in your pan, and I'm just going to knock off excess flour. Okay. I'm going to go and turn on my oven, which I should have already done. This cake cooks on 350. 350. So I'm going to turn my oven on. Set it for 350. And as soon as it gets to the temperature where it needs to, we're going to put this cake in. I'm going to grab the batter and let you see me pour it in. Okay. Batter is right here. And once I get my cake into the oven, then we're going to take our cherries, and I get the canned cherries. I just want to show you how I pour this into the cake pans. Should have had that oven on, huh? Yeah, I got right into the cake, but that's okay. It doesn't take the oven long. And I'm going to put half in this pan and the other half in this pan. If you don't know what half is when you're pouring it, it might be hard to tell. You put some in here and then you come back to that one. Isn't that beautiful? That's a beautiful chocolate cake. Yes, it is. Looks like this one has plenty. Let's put the rest of it. I want to get it all out of here. All of it. Now this cake is going to cook on 350 for 30 minutes. And usually around 25 minutes I'll go in and use a Q-tip, I'm sorry, not a Q-tip, really, a toothpick to see if the cake is done. If it comes out clean, then it's done. It may not have to go the full 30 minutes because you don't want to dry out your cake by overcooking it. So now I'm going to show you these cherries I bought. And I've already opened them because I wanted to be sure it was the right cherries. And what I'm going to do, we're going to go over here to the stove while we're waiting on. Okay, here's my stove here. I got a pot ready. Okay, we're going to put these cherries in this pot, and we still have breakfast here. I'm going to put these cherries in the pot. And it's probably not the best picture. I apologize. And what I want to do is kind of loosen these cherries up a little bit and sweeten them up a little bit. So I'm going to put some sugar in them. Just a little bit, maybe about a half a cup. And let them cook down. Turn them on high just to get them started. And then I'll turn them down. They'll cook down and I will put them in between the layers. That's about a half a cup there. Put them down in between the layers. Now while the cake is cooking, my cherries will be cooking and they'll be ready to put in between the layers of my cake. And like I said, if you don't like cherries, you don't think the idea of cherries and chocolate sounds good, in between the layers, put in, just use your chocolate icing. Use chocolate icing. If you don't want the cherries, that's fine. Okay, we're gonna go back over here while those are cooking. And I am going to put this cake in the oven. Remember, 350 for 30 minutes. Check it around 25 minutes. See if it's done. But I'm going to come back and show you this cake when I take it out of the oven. I'm going to show you how I put my cherries in between the layers of my cake and put icing on my cake. I'll see you back. Bye-bye. Hey y'all, I'm back and we're getting ready to get our chocolate cake out of the oven. Look at these beautiful chocolate cakes. Beautiful chocolate cakes. And now these cakes actually cook for 30 minutes. And I want to correct myself. A little bit earlier, I misspoke and I said 2.5 eggs, which doesn't make sense. It's 2 extra large eggs. 2 extra large eggs. And the cake cooked on 350. And we can cook it anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes. Mine cooked for 30 minutes. But come over here and look at these beautiful cakes. Come on down here and let's show these cakes. Beautiful cakes. Okay, I'm gonna let these cakes cool off a little bit and then I'm gonna come back and turn them out of the pan and let you see me put the cherries on it and the icing on it. As soon as they cool down, we'll be back in just a few minutes. Bye-bye. All right, we are back with our chocolate cakes. And what I'm going to do, they're still pretty warm, so they're too warm for the icing. But what I'm going to do is show you how I release these cakes from the pan. And if you saw my first video where I made a pound cake, then you know I use cake plates. Like I said before, it just makes your cake look better. So we're going to take the first cake that's still kind of warm. This is how I release my cake out of the pan. See how easy that was? They come right out of the pan. No hassle. I'm going to lay it down here. Now remember, we put a piece of parchment paper on the bottom of this pan, so we need to take it off of the cake. And we took that piece off. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these cherries and I'm going to put them on this layer of the cake. And like I said, if you're not going to use the cherries, this is the time you would put your icing on so that it would be in between your 2 layers. Okay? So I'm just going to take my cherries, I'm going to spread them out. And believe it or not, everybody in my family doesn't really like the cherries, but Carrie likes the cherries. So Carrie is baking the cake. So we're gonna have cherries. Maybe next time I'll fix it with just the icing. But I'll pretty much eat this entire cake myself. Anyway, my husband and I, you know, he'll say he doesn't really like sweets too much, but he eats them. Yeah, he waits until I go to work and he gets into the sweets, but that's okay. Okay, so that's our cherries. Look how pretty that is. Look how pretty that is. And then we're gonna take the last cake. It's not too hot to pick up. Take it out of the pan. Easy peasy, look at that. Get rid of that parchment paper. Take this hand and you lay it on top. Being very gentle because this cake is still warm. Look at that, perfect cake. Perfect cake. Grease your pans good, flour your pans, your cakes are gonna come out. So this cake is still too hot to put the icing on it, but I will put icing on it, and I'll just flash a picture of the cake when I'm done. Some of you may say, store-bought icing? Yeah. When you bake the cake and you made it from scratch, if you want to cheat a little bit, it's all good. I'm going to put this icing on this cake, and I'll see you back soon to show you the cake.